because this is sort of
This meeting is
historic, I think. And yeah, so I might as well tell you a little bit about of the story of cybernephrology. Probably a lot of this is already known to you. But in 1996, late 96, the National Kidney Foundation had a think tank in which they visioned this entity of NKF cybernephrology. I got wind of this. I said, look, I'm already doing what you're talking about. Why don't you let me run it? And believe it or not, I don't remember providing a lot of details. I probably provided some, but they said, yeah, that sounds good to us. And so there was no search and selection. There were no other candidates. It's like the easiest job I ever got, And
yeah.
The
truth is the NKF is lucky that they just had you do it, because they would have completely messed it up. But
I don't know.
And I apologize for editorializing, but there's no question in my mind that the way you organized it was both effective, and also it wound up being a template for the development of CenterSpan and PEDNEF.
Yes, yeah. No, I know we did stimulate other similar activities. And so the other side of this then has to do with what happened at the end of the 10 years. Now, I always knew that this financial end was coming because the National Kidney Foundation in the United States raises money by going door to door, asking people to give money. And they weren't saying, we're sending 400,000 of this money a year to Canada. Did you know that? They weren't saying that. So I realized that, eventually this largesse from them was going to end. What they decided about cybernephrology and me personally was really cool. And if I'd been writing a fantasy life for myself, I never could have found these elements. I just don't think like this. I had never used the words in perpetuity before, but that's what they decided. So this would be of interest to Pram. Think about women making bold moves, because that's what happened here. So the university was aware of this cybernephrology entity. And it was kind of an entrepreneurial thing going on within the University of Alberta. Well, they had help for that. They had mentoring for people who wanted to do entrepreneurial activity. But they were looking, who did we mentor? There was, Michelle Hales, who was my assistant, and there was me, the old guy, right? And she looked so much more in need of mentoring than me. So that's what they did. They announced that they had this university venture mentoring program for which we eminently qualified, and they were quite excited about what the future of cybernephrology could be. And they provided here very high level mentoring. Well, think of how your sense of self grows when you've got your own personal mentor, right? It's like really cool. And what the mentor told Michelle was that we didn't have enough profile on the NKF website. We had a single page and people occasionally went there, but we were not getting enough visibility that way and needed our own website. Well, there weren't other components of the NKF at that time creating their own website, but that's what Michelle did. She didn't talk to me or anybody. She contacted a website developer, got it going, and then when the plan was finished, she showed it to me. Hey, kid, what do you think? And it was beautiful, you know? So anyway.
So this was the origin of Nephrol.
No, Nephrol came from cyberNephrology itself from 97. But after that, somewhere in the 2000s, that is when we created our own cyberNephrology website, right?
Got it.
And so, but this got the NKF thinking, particularly as their coffers began looking more and more bare, that we could sustain ourselves. If we could create this wonderful website ourselves, we could probably do a lot of other things ourselves. And so at the end of the 10 years, what they told me was like the coolest, unexpected message I've ever received in my life, that they wanted me to have this role of running NKF Cybernephrology in perpetuity, forever. And they wanted all of our activities to continue forever. They just couldn't pay for it anymore. But they thought I was a very creative guy and I'd find the funding from elsewhere, and they were right. So that's the situation that we're in now. Just because they said it's in perpetuity, does that mean we have to maintain it forever? No, but we could, right? That was their plan. That what we had created during those 10 years between 97 and 2007 should exist forever. And my spirit running it was kind of the thing that they liked, and they hoped that that would also keep going. So that's part of what this succession talk today is about, keeping that vision that they gave me in 2007 of this going in perpetuity for forever and doing all the stuff that it has done in the past. So now, it's not been very burdensome. You might say, well, there must be some annual thing you need to fill out or paperwork. No, when you're running something in perpetuity that doesn't really exist on the books at all, there's no paperwork whatsoever. I don't have to file taxes. That's nothing. Nada, zero. It's a pretty.
So Kim, I'm curious, how have you been able to fund this?
Well, just think about it. We had 10 years of these highly paid employees doing all the things that cyber nephrology needed. And we were very student oriented always, because when I was in training, in my PGY 1 year of training, January 1973, took 5 Oberlin College students for their winter term. And Hopkins was training me in pathology. I was training them in kind of what it's like to be a doctor and life in general. And luckily, Robert Heptonstall, my boss at the time, was fascinated by this and said, no trainee has ever done anything remotely like this. Most people are so overwhelmed by the challenge of learning a medical specialty that they are very careful not to add anything to it. And so what you're doing is exactly the opposite. I think it should continue. So I kept young people surrounding me then from that moment, from January 1973 until now. So PRAM is sort of a part of that, right? So, so what I realized is, like, what do students work for? Are they just thinking about the money, man, the money? No, they're thinking reference letters. I want to get into a good school. And so that's worth much more to them than money. And so suddenly we had the opportunity for 19-year-olds to run a $250,000 medical meeting that's high profile, that's impactful, that that does big things out there. So Tori Sheldon ran the 2007 Banff meeting. Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing experience for these young people. And I think there was no downside, really. Did she make any mistakes? Yeah, but if we had had highly paid professional staff running the meeting, they wouldn't have been the same mistakes, but there would have also been some. So yeah, we haven't really suffered from going from professional staffing to student staffing. And I think the students have benefited very much. And part of it comes from their sense when they talk to me that I'm treating them like an equal. Like you can fake that. Like you can tell somebody, I regard you as my equal, but everything in your behavior tells them that ain't so at all, Like I talk that talk, but when you give them major responsibility, like in 2013, Akshatha Raghavir, who was going to get into medical school a few weeks later, but nobody knew that. She was the only one for the meeting, the 2013 Banff meeting in Brazil, that knew the deal with everybody coming, where they were staying, what they were speaking about, what the deal with them was. She uniquely held all that information, even the stuff in Portuguese. She spent much of her day just translating from Portuguese to English and trying to figure out what was going on at the other end there. Yeah, and that was like the coolest thing. Think about that. She's there and she starts getting these strange messages on her phone. You're thinking maybe it's a library fine, but they're obviously very persistent. You've been accepted to medical school and you've got 2 weeks to get ready. Holy shit. That came in the middle of the meeting she was running, These are very exciting moments for young people that I'm very proud to have been responsible for. And so that's part of the legacy that you guys are going to help me to maintain now. And
good.
What I wanted to give you the idea, the end result here is pretty simple. I want Pram to do most of the work. And when she contacts Kevin or Ron, I want it to be fun for you guys, not burdensome, not like, light and airy and fun and, upbeat, so that on the rare occasion she needs to ask you stuff, you actually are feeling positively about that, rather than another boring, burdensome phone call from Pram. Got it. Yeah. Wow. And her job is to keep you guys as happy as she can, so that you have long-term sort of warm feeling toward these entities and keeping them going to whatever extent they should. And that it's as simple as that, it's not a lot of other detail. And what might happen, 2 things to look out for. One is maybe the email discussion groups are old and tired and serve no purpose anymore. Then you, Ron, are probably the most logical person to make that decision. That, this now only 70-year-olds are in this and we don't have much to talk about. Or maybe that never happens. Maybe young people join and remains vibrant for the next 20, 30 years. And then what if something becomes financially valuable? Then the other things that I have that are financially valuable, Kevin, as my son, has some stake in that, right? So if we kept things sufficiently interesting for him, he would be able to make, decisions about stuff like that. that the course content, the, technology and future of medicine course is actually now worth something, or we could create this or that from it, or whatever. Yeah.
Right.
So that's kind of how I see the four of us basically working together. And Simon, who I think will be here, but he's sort of technology-wise more advanced than the four of us. So if he had something on the tech side that we couldn't understand, he could help us with that. So.
Okay, well, I consent.
Okay,
Sounds
well,
like
that's good.
plan.
Yeah.
Does
Kim, I'm
Dr.
obviously
Shapiro
happy to
consent to being the consulting physician on the email discussion groups?
Simon is here. Yay. Okay, cool. Well, you've arrived at a very positive moment. Everybody are sort of consenting to their roles here.
So you understand, I'm obviously happy to help out as best I can. I'm not a nephrologist. I'm not a pathologist. I'm a transplant surgeon. Yeah. And I have confined my involvement with contributions to nephrol to what I know, which is kidney transplantation. And I guess I've been a little bit useful in that way. It's quite interesting, Kim, when I visited Edmonton in 1997 and apparently set the record for the largest number of slides in a single-hour presentation. This is back when we used physical slides, 2 carousels, 160 slides.
Wow.
And you told me, and you signed me on to Nephrol, and I was barely computer literate in those days, just barely. Right. And I was getting all of these emails about nephrology, about which I know nothing. And then suddenly somebody asked a pretty basic transplant question, and nobody was answering.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, okay, fine, I should answer. And that was sort of the beginning of the rest of it. And I wound up getting involved, but pretty strictly from a transplant point of view, because that's what I know.
Well, don't worry about that. I think you'll be able to tell whether the other aspects are working. You don't have to take part, you don't have to moderate anything. It's just a matter of, is this ancient resource of email discussion group? When I was explaining it to Pram, she's saying, well, why don't you use like a Reddit forum or something? I mean, it's something modern and vibrant and interesting. Yeah, but I'm not sure it would quite have the patient privacy and stuff that we might be looking for. But yeah, so we just need to figure out whether we should keep all these things going, or whether the point has been reached at some point where the traffic has died down and it doesn't seem like even the interaction that exists is that medically valuable. And when that happens, we can just say, okay, we don't need to do this anymore. But it might not happen for a long time. Yeah.
So as somebody who's only involved in email forums, because I don't have a Twitter handle, and I'm not involved in any of the other things. And what's the one that Zuckerberg runs?
Facebook, yeah.
Yeah, and I have a moral opposition to Facebook, and I refuse to become part of it because I think Zuckerberg's a fascist and gave us Trump, for which we're still paying. But I'm digressing. I'm really just a dumb surgeon who's good on email, or who knows a little bit about email and knows a little bit about transplantation. The young people seem to be going to things like Twitter, and my concern, of course, is that the issues, at least in transplant questions with regard to nephrol, don't lend themselves to bites. They lend themselves to actually comprehensive discussions.
Yeah.
with legitimate beef, as opposed to like, little bites. And while I'm certainly happy to have other social media, and I have a social media associate editor for my journal, Clinical Transplantation. One of our transplant nephrologists here is quite good at that. I've remained dedicated to the email groups, Nephrol, Centrospan, PNEF, and I think that has been a source of sort of more substance. But I could be wrong because I don't do the others.
Yeah, well,
and I'm 68 and I'm unlikely to do the others.
Yeah. No, let's not think the tasks here are larger than they are. And you would realize, I think, that there are some things here that if they stopped occurring, only Kim Solez would know or care. Right? Things like that are not terribly valuable to keep going. Particularly if your question is, should we keep this going now that Kim's not around? And it seems like he was the only one who cared about this, So,
but aren't there over 1,000 nephrologists around the world who sort of depend on it?
Yeah, yes, there are. It's like 700 something now. Yeah, it was as high as 1,400. Yeah, so it's about half what it previously was. But there are various groups too. It's not just all one group. Some is more renal pathology, and some is more renal medicine and so on. So yeah, but I don't think you have to worry about those details. I just sort of I want to make this enjoyable for everyone, and even like what Simon and Pram are doing now with this archive we have of the cyberNephrology web material. Honestly, when you look at the history page for the Banff Foundation, most of it's already there. There's just a few little things that aren't there of what the individual meeting content was. So it isn't like this is something they need to get done before Christmas. No, it isn't.
Sure.
Yeah, no.
Now, Kim, you remain in charge of organizing the Banff meetings.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's not going to change.
Well, yeah, I don't think it will change. We're in a very interesting situation there, that you might think that after 31 years, things would be pretty much set in their ways and maybe a little bit boring. That's not at all what happened. We discovered in 2022 that our complexity outpaces what ordinary consensus can handle. So that simply doing consensus agreement about the classification doesn't work anymore, because there are just too many parameters, too many different things you can measure, and different opinions about how things should be classified. So we need something more KDIGO-like, or we need a different framework actually for making medical decisions from what the findings of the transplant biopsy are. So that's quite exciting to me, and it's surprising to see that we're asking these sorts of existential questions of what should the Banff classification for the next 30 years be? That's what we're asking.
Well, and it's actually only going to get more complicated, because if clinical xeno starts, there's going to need to be classification for the xeno rejections.
There absolutely is.
If the bioengineered kidneys come, and I actually predict that they'll come sooner than we think they will, they'll be more like human kidneys. And so, because they'll be on an acellular pig scaffold, but they'll be human kidneys.
Yeah.
So I think that the rules may remain the same.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think actually that you would think after being in charge of something for 30 years, would you want another 30 years? But in these circumstances, yes, I'm quite interested in what the next 30 years hold. There's a lot at stake in the sense of now that we have identified and gone public with the fact that ordinary consensus cannot deal with this complexity level, then there has to be a plan B, and it has to be one that's appealing and works. Yeah, so that's the situation that we're in. Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, I've been in, Kim, and I remained in, and I'm happy to help. My level of expertise is a sort of segment of what the conversation is like on nephro.
Yeah,
and
that's fine. I would point out that your main attribute is you were very, very, very concerned when it looked like we had kicked you off the group. And that was really cool because you are exactly the person I was looking for to have this role. And when it became clear that this would have been quite a very negative thing for you, if we had indeed kicked you out, that sort of it fit together, the puzzle pieces all came together then. And so, yeah, no, I think we don't have to plan any grand things here. What I was thinking in terms of what Pram and Simon are now doing, like Pram could do screen captures of part of the archive and then identify what she's planning to get rid of. And that can be the way she maintains the records. She doesn't necessarily have to show them to anybody, but she can count how many files there are that we removed from the cleaned up, BAMF part of the archive. When we're done with that cleanup, we rename it and send it back to the IST people the same way they sent it to us and say, here it is, now put up the BAMF part, right? If they say, well, you did it wrong, well, tell us how you want us to do it, and we'll do that next time. Yeah.
And there's funding in place to let it all continue to function.
Yes. I think one of the funny things is that up until 2017, I was paying an annual fee to maintain this stuff on the university website. And in 2017, they said, oh, well, the computer it's on is old and tired, and we want to give it new hosting. I said, great. So they provided the new hosting, and then no invoice came. So I contacted them. I said, where is the invoice for the past year? They said, we have not been doing anything for you, sir, ever. There never was anything to invoice for. Are you sure? Yes, we're very sure. We've looked up your name, invoices, and we've never done anything for you. But then the content all kept working. So I thought, well, that's pretty cool.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of the circumstance. It's a bit of chaos, but and now there was this strange person whose name I did not know, but she was the main person telling us all this stuff about, no, we haven't lost the content. Yes, we'll give it to you. Yes, we'll put it back. We understand. that this university ranks 6th in the world in transplantation because of you and because of this content. And so we will put it back. Yeah, so that I don't think we have a lot to worry about. But I would just like to sort of do our due diligence. And so what about naming names, right? I think the time for that is in May 2023. Why do I say that? So Rebecca, who is a 4th-year medical student who graduates, I think, in June of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And she is currently on the books. She is the person who would inherit my Facebook page if anything happened to me, and my YouTube channel. And I don't think that's a logical sort of albatross for her to carry into her medical career. So I'm sort of thinking that by that time, Pram maybe would be willing to take over these things, and so, you know, freeing Rebecca to continue on with her, you know, physician career without having to always worry, oh my God, all this Kim Solez stuff. Yeah. So yeah, it's just as simple as that. And I think other people will also come on the scene and show an interest in providing help. And yeah, so I think it'll be great. And
Okay.
yeah, so like what about crashing urgency? There is no crashing urgency about anything, but it's very nice to have this Zoom call, but I think that I will not make any public use of it until May 2023, because that's sort of the time when we could at least let people know Pram's name, you know, that if someday they can't contact me and they want to know the heck's going on, they could find out from her. And then she would know how to contact you and Kevin and Simon and so on for anything else that was needed. Yeah, so that's sort of the plan. So Pram is going to take the course that I give starting in January. That course ends in April. So that way in May, there's no real conflict between the fact that she's taking a course from me and that she's doing this other stuff. Yeah, so that's why I would think it sort of makes sense to.
Pram and Simon, what is your background and where are you in the world?
I can go
Simon?
first. Oh, sorry, Simon, you can go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I'm in my 3rd year of my undergraduate degree, and I met Dr. Solez by signing up for his course. So, yeah.
And
I'm in Edmonton.
and you're planning to apply to medical school at some point?
Yes, actually, it would be in September of this year.
Oh, I see. You're going to go straight through lockstep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think the other thing is that many modern medical students don't become medical students for a year or two. So sometimes that happens, that you're hanging around reapplying, right? And many successful medical students have that history. So she might also have that. And so this could be.
There's a substantial percentage of because I'm able to say no on a routine basis. So I serve on the admissions committee for the medical school here, where it's pretty clear to me I wouldn't have gotten into medical school if I were applying today, because the kids are all so much smarter than I ever was, and have so much more. They have accomplished so much more than I ever did. But it's sort of actually reassuring to like meet all these kids who are so super smart. You actually think there's a future to the world. yeah, we need all the hope we can get. What can I tell you?
Yeah. So Simon is also applying to medical school and yeah, so yeah, so that's
Okay.
Yeah, I applied to Mount Sinai actually, so I'm just waiting for the interview invite. So, if you could do anything. I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Yeah, so I met Dr. Solez also the same way Pram did through his course. And I'm just finishing up my master's right now. So I'm gonna defend in January. And you know how the med cycle goes. I'm hoping this time I applied and I can get in. So that's
I would imagine tuition in Edmonton for medical school is some tiny fraction of what it is in the United States.
it's an order of magnitude less.
Yeah, I would have thought that the level of the difference in obscenity in terms of the cost of medical school education in the United States would make it relatively unattractive.
Yeah.
I mean, people graduating from medical school with $250,000 of debt or more. I mean, it's like,
yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
I remember when I was a freshman in college, room and board and tuition in 1972, 73 this is undergraduate, was $5,250 at a private university.
Yeah, now it's hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, no, we sent 2 children to college, so we have some vague understanding of this. Okay, well, I'm here. Let me know how I can help. I haven't figured out how to stop working yet. I'm 68 and I've done 7 transplants in the first 2 weeks of December.
Good. Well done.
So I'm still active and busy, and my wife's questioning about when I'm actually supposed to stop, but I haven't quite come up with a plan yet. So I'm here and I'm happy to help.
Yeah. So I'm 76 and I plan to keep going forever. And yeah,